somebody's had an off in sector 16 of the track. And red flag. Somebody must be in the wall.
And it is the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. Now, he was going to the back of the grid anyway. He hasn't progressed from Q1 in Mexico since 2017. He was out in Q1 in Austin, and he has, exiting the final corner, the Peraltada, had quite a big impact with the barriers.
Are you okay, Lance?
Yeah, okay.
Well, he's okay, and first and foremost, that's what we want to hear, but the barriers aren't. The car certainly is.
Plays into Mercedes' hands. They hadn't left the pits. In fact, they have, but they haven't started a fast lap, so they can coast back in now. Whereas Perez and Verstappen had started pushing along. But 11 minutes to go, the clock stops in qualifying, and it's ripped the front suspension off, hasn't it? The key thing is, have any of the wishbones damaged the chassis? If you need a new chassis, you start from the pit lane in the race.
Turned 23 last weekend, Lance Stroll, and yet to score a top 6 finish in 2021. His task was already being made difficult by that engine penalty for this weekend. There's a lot of debris around, and let's have a look at what happened. So around the Peraltada, he's fighting it all the way, isn't he?
Yeah, he just got a little bit wide and tried to stick with it. He's on the dirty part of the track there. Yeah, that's what the problem is. You can see the dust. And yeah, that kind of, it knocks you about a bit as well when you get that sort of acceleration off the barriers. So he's got wide. Now he's on the dirty part of the track. Can't get it back onto line. And straight to the scene of the accident.
In hindsight, when you get a moment like that before you hit the barriers, is it wise just to back out of it? Can you back out of it and avoid the barriers?
Well, if you haven't ever been out there on that weekend or in your career...
Is he okay?
Yeah, copy. He's out the car.
Concern from Lewis Hamilton. He and Lance Stroll, very good friends.
And yeah, you might think you can hang on to it. If you haven't had that experience out there, Croft, you might think, I've got enough downforce, I'm building up speed. It'll stick. I want to get this lap finished, because the line comes up very closely after that, doesn't it? And you find out the hard way, it won't stick out there.
So that's a set of softs used up by the two Red Bull drivers, as you mentioned, Martin, but not really by the two Mercedes, who were just coasting around on an outlap. That means it's 3 sets of soft tyres each for the Red Bull and the Mercedes drivers. Let's go straight to the Aston Martin pit wall, though. Otmar Safnauer, well, a lot of debris on the track, Otmar, but first and foremost, good to see that your man, Lance Stroll, is okay.
Yeah, he's fine. A little bit unlucky there. Ran a bit wide in the last corner and just couldn't collect it. But yeah, it looked like the barrier did its job much better this time than when Bottas did a similar thing.
So presumably the Pete G there, the medical light is on, yeah, and he's obliged to go and have some checks and check for concussion and everything.
Yeah, I think yeah, he is. That's absolutely right. But he came on the radio and said he's absolutely fine. But yeah, he'll be going to the medical center, but he's okay.
With one car out of qualifying now, of course, you can't practice any slipstreams. Lance to help Seb later on in the sessions. We talked before the session. You were going to try that. What do you think the advantage is for a slipstream and a tow here?
Well, if you get it absolutely right, it's a couple of tenths. But, you know, there's also the consideration coming out of the last corner and not having the downforce required to get on it early enough. So it's between 1 and 2 tenths.
Otmar, thanks ever so much for joining us. We'll be back with you in a few moments' time as we see once again the accident that has stopped the session, the red flag here at Mexico City. Lance Stroll getting out of the car, which is great to see, but his car is going to need some extensive fixing and probably the Tech Pro barriers as well. While the marshals set to doing that, let's head to the Skypad. Corinne Chandok.
Yeah, thanks, Crofty. We've got the onboard here of Stroll coming through the stadium through turn 15. And when he comes into the right-hander here at 16, it all looks okay. He's on the right path. But now watch his hands. And he just, at this point, as he starts to put the power down, he starts to get there, a snap of oversteer. Now that puts him a little bit wider than he would have liked. He kind of wants to be along there. But if you could see where the left-hand tyres are, they're now just along the outside. The rear will be, of course, just outside that white line. And that, as Martin said rightly, put him on the dust. And it meant that when he started to put the throttle pedal down even more, it just spun up the back tyres and sent him off. And at that stage, he was a bit of a passenger. So, yeah, just slightly offline, and that caught him off guard. And big damage there. So a long night ahead for these Aston mechanics.
Thank you, Karun, and you're taking the Perel Tarda even at about 135 miles an hour for this qualifying session. No time set by Max Verstappen. He was out the track. He was quite a long way into a lap when the red flag came out. And there you can see he's got 3 sets of new tyres available to him in the soft, 2 mediums and 1 set of the hard, and they're still looking at the rear wing of Verstappen's car.
Yeah, they're band-aiding both those rear wings at Red Bull through this session, aren't they? Desperately trying to keep that all intact.
Now, you mentioned that the cars are in parc ferme, but if they see a potential issue that needs fixing, they're allowed to do that under the supervision by the FIA?
Yes, they can do that. But anything they put on has to be identical specification. There's now a gurney flap going on the rear wing as well, a little 90-degree flap they put on to generate some extra downforce. Quite very efficient and effective. Gives you drag, of course, as well, but if you want to get a bit more downforce. But so as soon as you roll out of the pit lane and you click the timing beam,
yep,
you're in parc ferme conditions. You can't change the car again then until after the race has started. So anything Red Bull put on that has got to be an identical spec. As I said earlier, if they've got a problem, they can repair that overnight with identical parts.
Ted, let's head down to you.
Well, they've definitely got a problem, haven't they?
Yeah.
And not having, I almost had to couldn't believe my eyes when I saw neither Red Bull rear wing on the car with 10 minutes to go before qualifying. Obviously, the way they do it at Red Bull, they don't like to change all of these sort of sensitive bits in the garage where the irritating likes of me can see. They take them out the back and then fix them, whether they're the front wings or the rear wings or anything like that. You see the race director, Michael Massey, there overseeing the repairs to that barrier. That other chap from the FIA you saw was Joe Bauer. He's the sort of paddock policeman. He was advising the chief mechanic from Aston Martin as to what they can and can't change. So I think Red Bull definitely do have a problem. I think it's okay for this session, but as you say, Martin, it is going to have to do something, change something overnight. I'm just getting a line from Williams as to whether George Russell's repairs are okay. He did one outlap on a medium set of tyres and then came back into the pits. His teammate Nicholas Latifi actually conked out in the middle of the pit lane on his way back to the garage, but he is okay. And I've got confirmation that great job by the Williams guys and girls down at the garage there on George Russell's side of the car. They are ready. That's a great speedy engine change. Well done.
Absolutely superb. They had a few more minutes to get it done because we're still in the red flag conditions. Team of Red Bull's experience in Formula One, 200 podiums now in Formula One after their efforts in Austin. I'm sure would have sought out Joe Bauer, the paddock policeman from the FIA, and said, right, okay, this is our problem, this is how we're going to fix it, are we okay to do this? And they wouldn't be doing what they're doing at the moment if Joe Bauer hadn't have said yes, I would imagine.
He's the go-to man, and he's one of the greatest unsung heroes of modern Formula One as far as I'm concerned. If you see the list they put out after an event of what they've checked on all of these cars, then we know how complex these cars are, and what Joe and his FIA gang do in terms of scrutineering and checking the legality. All the clever minds in Formula 1 that design these cars and the resource and tools that they have. Joe and his gang have to spot the deliberate mistakes, as it were. So he does a tremendous job for Formula 1.
Well, he's aided, isn't he? There will be marshals within each garage.
Scrutineer,
The scrutineers that spend all weekend in each garage, and each side of the garage, and anything that gets replaced, the scrutineers are on it, and they will know exactly what's gone on and come off.
Yeah, which bit of that Red Bull would you be looking at right now as the scrutineer with all those people working on it? But the teams scrutineer their own cars now, by the way, on a Thursday, and sign a document. So it's sort of self-regulated in that respect.
It's like an honesty bar for Formula One.
Yeah.
And in the main, are very honest, because in a way to ensure that honesty is the best policy, the FIA have the right to completely take apart and scrutineer one car at the end of every race, and they do that every race just to make sure that it complies with what it should.
Which they did on Valtteri Bottas's car, because there's this talk of them having some kind of clever system on the air intake, and they declared it completely legal after Austin.
So there we go. Right, down to you, Ted.
I have news from the Red Bull Racing Garage that it is just precautionary work, they say, which was being done on those rear wings, whether it's on the gurney flap or the rear wing plane itself, the end plate that which we saw, or the DRS, the movable rear wing actuator and assembly itself. They're not specifying, but it was precautionary work that was started prior to qualifying actually getting underway, as we saw, with no rear wings on the car, and it's continuing now. So they must have had the clearance from the FIA that even though the cars are effectively in park firmly now, as you were saying earlier, Martin, they can continue that work in this red flag stoppage. Good to know that Aston Martin can now get the work underway on repairing Lance's car for the race tomorrow.
Yes, but it's going to take more than the 11 minutes available to get Lance back out into Q1. That work will commence after qualifying's finished, I'd have thought.
11 hours might just about cover it, but yeah, there was a lot of work. And say, when you bounce out of a barrier like that, you sort of pluck the suspension back, it can do rather a lot of damage. Lance is one of those drivers who keeps hold of the steering wheel. There's two schools of thought on this. I used to like to get rid of the steering wheel because it can break your thumb or your wrist. Other drivers like to really just hang on to that wheel.
Yeah, I kind of would be in your school of thought on that one. Wrestling is hugely popular in Mexico City. I've even been to see it, and it's absolutely fantastic. And we have quite a few characters wearing the wrestling masks stationed around the track. When last I checked on the attendance, it was about half an hour before qualifying started, there were 115,000 fans in, but that was and counting, because people were still making their way into the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez to come and see qualifying. It'll be a sellout of 140,000 tomorrow, and in that section alone, 30,000 fans.
Well, they make their own entertainment, because it's actually a dull bit of racetrack as far as I'm concerned. It's just too narrow and slow. You never see much action there. We did it earlier on the show, didn't we? Max overtaking Valtteri in there when he got a puncture, but you might sit there 2 years before you actually see a credible overtake. But they do make their own atmosphere in there.
Certainly do. Jonathan Wheatley, sporting director at Red Bull, because Red Bull are stationed quite a long way up the grid and near to the final corner, just making sure that the repairs to the barrier are being done correctly, and seeing what the marshals are doing there, because he wouldn't want to see anything that he thinks wouldn't be safe, and would be the man in a position to radio Michael Massey, the race director, to say, are you sure about this?
Yeah, and it's a great responsibility, isn't it? Everybody wants to get qualifying back underway, and he has to take a judgment call on that Tech Pro barrier. Yeah. If another car went in the same place, would it still do its job? That's a tough one.
They've moved the barrier slightly from the last time that we were here in Mexico City. Remember, of course, because of the COVID pandemic, we weren't here in 2020, but they have changed it. And I think they've brought it a little bit closer to the track, and they've taken one layer of barrier out. We had obviously the Valtteri Bottas incident there the last time we had qualifying here, right at the end. Still Michael Massey, who's just on the radio in his FIA blue jumper. Down there.
There's two bits of the second layer, the red second layer out. He's got to see back in yet. I mean, it wasn't that big a shunt, to be honest. It was spectacular in a way, wasn't it? And when bits fly off like that, it's dissipating the energy. You wouldn't call that a particularly big crash, but it's certainly one that took a fair old bite out of the barriers, and even more so out of the Aston Martin.
Yes, very important to shade yourself from the sun. We are 2.2 kilometres closer to it here, and already my forehead is starting to go red despite applying the factor 30 today. Boy, Ted Kravitz, I wish I'd have taken your advice and used your SPF factor 110 sun cream this morning.
Yeah, amazing purchase from Austin, Texas was SPF 110.
I mean, seriously.
I don't know whether it's actually true.
That is going to keep you blue, sir, for the rest of the weekend.
Got to protect yourselves in these very sunny environments we have. Sorry if it's not quite as sunny as at home as it is. Certainly in the UK and Ireland at the moment, it's night time, so it wouldn't be
dark.
It wouldn't be dark. But since we've got this moment together, I just want to go through some of the people with a bit of work to do from free practice 3. Really, we had the usual suspects: Mick Schumacher and Nikita Mazepin at the back in free practice 3 going into this session. Nikita Mazepin did a lap time actually just now and said it was Underseer City all over the place. That's just next to Bad Handling Central. But anyway, so he's back in the garage, and maybe they'll put a bit more front wing on because there's a bad case of understeer on that Haas car. George Russell was down there, as was Esteban Ocon, but I was surprised to see Fernando Alonso and Sebastian Vettel only 14th and 15th in last practice going into this session. There is a reason for Alonso, I can tell you. He did lock up at the last corner. I think you saw this, Crofty. Lost 6/10 of a second, the team believed, Alpine believed, and would have been considerably more ahead than that. But no real explanation as to Sebastian Vettel's pace. Maybe this gives us some insight into Lance Stroll's handling problems in that Aston Martin. I asked Aston Martin, they said no real problems, just that seemed to be where they are. So maybe Sebastian Vettel, who had good pace on the long runs, didn't he,
yes, he did.
guys, can actually get outperform his sort of rather lowly position of P14 going into this qualifying.
Run on the medium tyres in FP2 was averaged out to be faster than the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, and he's a man that goes well at this track. I wonder if his, from memory, I think it was his final flying lap was a little bit earlier than some others in FP2, with the track rubbering in, could explain why he would have been down a bit lower than you'd have expected.
It's more the track cleaning up, because look there in sort of where you can see oil in 4, but 5 or 6. There is no rubber on the track, is there? You normally get quite a line of rubber on the racing line, and it's just not going down. It's just the tyre's not really biting in to this surface. They've less downforce, of course, we know, despite the biggest wings they've got, and it's just the nature of the tarmac.
So still just making some fixings to the Tech Pro barrier. There's a lot of people working down there, including Michael Massey, the race director. We'll have a 5-minute warning before Q1 resumes itself. And we stop this session with 10 minutes and 58 seconds to go. Charles Leclerc had just put in the fastest time of a 1:17.9. Sebastian Vettel second fastest. It was his teammate Lance Stroll that had the crash at the final corner that brought out the red flag. Carlos Sainz third fastest, just a tenth or so behind Sebastian Vettel. Lando Norris, one of 4 drivers there, starting at the back of the grid. He's taken a new internal combustion engine, a new turbocharger and a new MGUH for this weekend. And he was the last, Martin, of the Mercedes-powered drivers not to use extra power units elements this season.
Absolutely, and some have used a couple of extra ones, haven't they, already, over and above the 3 that are allowed, including, as we know, of course, Valtteri Bottas. So and Lance Stroll would be another one of those, wouldn't he, that's moving through them at the moment. Mercedes are making positive noises about Lewis's motor, although there's a general feeling that they might well take one in Brazil next weekend, an extra motor. It is a track you can overtake on, but you need to go in. I think the last 3 track Grand Prix of the year will be even Stevens, could even be in Mercedes' favour, but you do want a really powerful engine for the big showdown in those last couple of races.
If you were Toto Wolff, though, in the it's the phrase of the weekend, the pantomime exchanges between yourself and your counterpart at Red Bull, you'd want to say that the fears were being eased a little bit. You'd want to put a positive spin, and that might be the truth. But if it wasn't, you wouldn't really want to let on, would you?
No, and the same with Red Bull. Red Bull say, look, I think we're just absolutely fine on our motor, thank you. And there is some thought that the Honda degrades over mileage or kilometres, wherever you happen to be, less than the Mercedes-Benz. But you've got to try and filter out paddock noise versus reality. Reality is that Mercedes-Benz have been juggling engine motor problems, power unit problems.
All in the internal combustion engine. That's been the Achilles heel so far this season. Karun Chandok, let's head down to you.
Yeah, Crofty, since we've got a bit of time, I thought, and you mentioned Bottas's crash from a couple of years ago, I thought, why don't we compare the two? So this is Stroll again from today, just to refresh our memories. At this point here, as I said, he got a bit of oversteer, but watch, he's crucially sort of stayed on that white line and just slightly over it. And that's why, when he started to put power down, it's come back into the track, and eventually he's gone off a bit later. Bottas's crash was a bit different. If we switch to that one, you could see he's gone in just a bit deep, and he's already here. Look at him there. He's over the curb, and he's pretty much there already in the wall. And if I just play it along in slow-mo, he has ended up hitting the wall a lot earlier. So the Tech Pro, as you said, has moved along this year, but I don't think that that's really made the difference here because Bottas's crash was a heftier impact because obviously he went straight into the concrete and then into the Tech Pro. So if you had to do a competition into who did more damage, I would probably say that Valtteri's won that one. But anyway, since we had a bit of time, I thought it's worth having a look at that.
Well, worth having a look. And, of course, the Tech Pro jutted out a bit more a couple of years ago, and now they brought the first part of that barrier a bit closer to the track. Good news, everybody. The session is going to resume in 5 minutes' time. We have the words from race control that we can get back on with qualifying. So thank you very much for staying with us while the barrier gets repaired. Your patience will be rewarded with qualifying starting soon.
Super glue will be dry on the back of the Red Bull, won't it? Whatever resin they use on that. But yeah, they did use their tyres harder than Mercedes, although the soft tyre, getting through Q1 shouldn't be a problem for any of them, even if they have to run a second time on the same set of softs.
And the soft tyre shouldn't really come into the equation for tomorrow's race as well. Bearing in mind that Max Verstappen, last time we were here, I think ran 66 laps on the hard compound tyre after that early pit stop. Lewis Hamilton ran 47 laps on the hard compound tyre on his way to victory here from third on the grid. And they won't be using the softs, you wouldn't have thought.
No, I don't think so, but it goes hand in hand, Crofty, isn't it? No marbles out on the track, no rubber going down under braking and in the traction zones, low tyre wear and degradation. It's all part of the same thing, of course, in terms of, they're not really getting good purchase into the asphalt.
It would be nice to come here and have a two-stop race. I think we'd see a much different Mexico City Grand Prix if it was a two-stop race. But the engineers and the strategists, very clever, very like-minded people, so they say, and they all tend to come up with the best one-stop strategy as the fastest way to do it. Necessarily the most entertaining way to do it. And I thought in Austin, the mix of strategies that we had in the race and two pit stops for drivers really added to the excitement.
Yeah, it did, kept us on the edge, but you have to say that charge down to the first corner tomorrow, the opportunity and risk for everybody and the two championship contenders in particular is enormous down there.
Who's got the most to lose? Max Verstappen with a 12-point lead, or Lewis Hamilton, who's got to go aggressive because he's got to reduce that arrears?
Well, whoever, if you are singularly knocked out or sent to the back with a puncture or something, it doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter, does it? If you're both knocked out, then obviously Lewis has got more to lose in that respect. He needs to be, hauling some points back here.
Absolutely. And now there is an incident involving Kimi Räikkönen that's going to be investigated after the session. It's a red flag incident. I haven't seen it. I don't think we've seen it on the world feed. But I wonder if Kimi didn't slow down enough when the red flag came out, and the stewards want to have a little chat with him. That could be a penalty coming Kimi's way if it was the case.
Yeah. Look, but maybe he kept it pinned a little bit too long. You're supposed to completely abandon that lap. And if they're double wave yellows, meaning there could well be marshals on track, people on track, your lap also gets deleted now, which I think is a good move. So in other words, you see double wave yellows, or you see red, a red flag, give up the lap. Exactly. Otherwise, it's going to be taken away from you anyway.
There's no benefit to not complying. 2 minutes to go, Ted Kravitz. Is there a queue at the end of the pit lane already?
There is. It seems that the AlphaTauri boys have had their espresso going in, the Italian-based team going into this session, because Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly have sprinted out of the garage and have been joined by the two Haas drivers as well. Now we have car number 55, Carlos Sainz, going down there in the Ferrari. It looks like on a used set. It looks like the set that he did an outlap with in the beginning of Q1. I don't know if you can see you've got an onboard of the AlphaTauri there. So oh, here we go. Yes. There's a replay of the Kimi incident.
Here's a replay of the Kimi incident. Now, there's a single waved yellow. He crossed. He crossed to come into the pits and then went back out again. And I think they'll ask him, why did you cross and then go back out? And I would imagine his answer will be, because I shouldn't have crossed where I did, and I thought I might get a penalty, so I thought I'd better carry on and do another lap. So I think what Kimi was trying to do there, Martin, was the logical thing and come straight into the pits. But you've got to come into the pits to the right-hand side of the bollard, and he'd already passed the bollard.
Yeah. I think he did the pragmatic thing in terms of not getting a penalty for crossing the line, didn't he? But
they might say to him, you shouldn't have done another lap.
Yeah.
That was a very silly thing to do.
A red flag overrules that.
And whilst, yes, he could complete a lap round and there would have been nothing blocking him on the track, he might not have known that, well, there could have been an incident somewhere else. And that's why you come into the pits as soon as you can.
Yeah. I mean, Mazepin got a reprimand, didn't he, on Friday for
not going the right way back onto the track
around a bollard, that then got taken away. The whole rule got taken away for Saturday.
Well, you know, Lewis Hamilton also got a reprimand for down at turn 1 for not going to the left of the bollard. Stampede is on though, Ted. They're coming out.
Well, I was going to say, just finish what I was thinking about. You say Stampede, you know, are we going to have the standoff in Q2 and Q3 as people struggle to get somebody to go first to give everybody else a tow on these long straights? And maybe it's not worth quite as much in the thinner air here, with drag is not as bad as at sea level, of course, but certainly that's why we're seeing Yuki Tsunoda out there. Of course, he is taking an engine penalty, so he's out there to give a tow to his teammate.
I have no power.
Oh, no.
He's coming. Nothing.
And I wondered why the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz was slowly making its way out of the pits alongside Sebastian Vettel, but it seems we have a power unit issue for Carlos Sainz, and it's just trundling along in first gear at the moment. And, well, he's just come out of the pits. He's got a long way to go to try and get back in. 10 minutes to go in this session. That might be Carlos Sainz out.
Yeah, and if he trundles all the way to the pit lane, he's going to cause all sorts of dramas.
No power. You need to rev up. Revs up. Wait phase. Try a wait phase. You need to rev up. In neutral. Nothing.
Vamos.
Here we go. Something.
We're away. Yeah.
Wow, so put it into neutral. Give it some revs. Hopefully things will reset itself when you've made a few adjustments as well. But, phew, that was a close one.
I know. The power's coming. I imagine Carlos was thinking, so is Christmas, but I'm not actually going anywhere at the moment. But finally, it's fired into life. Good news.
So Yuki Tsunoda is starting his flying lap right now, and Yuki, one of 4 drivers. If you're just joining us, I'll remind you, 4 drivers that will start at the back of the grid because they've got engine penalties coming. George Russell has got a 5-place gearbox penalty, but Tsunoda, Stroll, Ocon and Norris have their engine penalties, and they're all just waiting now through this stadium section to let the car in front go, get a bit further ahead so that they can pick up a little slipstream down the main straight but not get turbulent air through the corners.
Yes, I mean, they're rehearsing this for later on, obviously, Mercedes, because they don't need to do this to get through Q1. But this is then where you put a lot of faith in your brakes not grabbing and you're having enough front tyre temperature after this long straight with such a slow start to it. You've got to give a bit of a margin, and still Lewis was locking up as he went. He braked into the apex there, and the right front tyre that slightly unloaded complained, and the brake locked a little bit, under-rotated as it's called. And then make sure you brake in a straight line here to clip the curb. Turn 5 is a clumsy little corner that tightens a bit through the exit. The double right-hander of 6 coming up, and he just made the apex on the second part of that. This is a Yahoo part of the racetrack where they carry, and oh, that looked extremely wide, didn't it? But and Lewis can't take the same amount of curb that the Red Bulls can take through there, but it looks like he's really struggling for grip. But nonetheless, we know that he's got a reasonable turn of pace in that.
He's found speed in the middle sector, fastest so far. He was a 10th down on Lando Norris's best sector time, the best overall sector time in the first part of the lap, but Bottas has also picked up pace in that middle sector too. Hamilton round the final corner, he comes. The line comes at you very quickly indeed, and there's the fastest time, 1:17.5.
Yeah, that was a difficult lap for Lewis, though. He had another lock-up, didn't he, into the stadium. So the car looked a bit of a handful. Tyres not where they need to be. Such a slow start to the lap.
So 2/10 Max Verstappen up on, 3/10 up on Lewis Hamilton through the first sector. Middle sector-wise, another couple of tenths gain by Max Verstappen. This is looking like a very calm, very assured, and ultimately very speedy lap as his teammate Sergio Perez goes fastest by 6/100ths of a second. Lando Norris goes third fastest from McLaren, and Verstappen puts a lot of daylight between himself and the chasing pack, 6/10ths of a second.
Yeah, Mercedes can't do a slow start to the lap like that. So will they charge their batteries now and go again? They're still very much in close formation. Bottas, then Hamilton. And as you were pointing out, David, a lot of fans say to me, look, I don't understand it. As soon as they get behind each other, they always complain they can't, it's costing them so much time. But then you're talking about the slipstream, but it's down the straights they punch a hole in the air for you, but you don't want to be within 3 seconds of them when you get to the corners. And this was the little lock-up, the second time we've seen a small lock-up from Lewis on this lap. And then it went quite wide in turn 16 for good measure.
So Red Bull's only front row lockout of the turbo hybrid era that started in 2015 came here in Mexico. 2014 turbo hybrid era came here in Mexico in 2018. Daniel Ricciardo pipped his teammate Max Verstappen by 1/1000th of a second at the moment. 6.5 tenths between Verstappen and Perez, and we're just in Q1.
And Sainz has been off the track at T12, which means he'll get that lap deleted, won't he? Probably depends how far, but yeah, so Sergio then in there amongst the Mercedes in terms of his lap time, and the two Mercedes are going again then.
As the family of Sergio Perez looks on from the back of the Red Bull garage and looks on as Sergio Perez goes again, and Max Verstappen comes into the pits. He's had enough of Q1, and I'm not surprised. The only man into the 116s, he doesn't need to come out again.
Feeds the steering wheel into the corner quite cautiously, actually. There's not a whole lot of grip. That doesn't look fast, does it? He's backed off that lap.
So we'll go on board with Valtteri Bottas. Now, Bottas, 2 poles during the course of 2021. Best qualifying here at 4th. And Mercedes really need him this weekend to try and help. You almost feel with the pace of the cars, they're fighting with one arm tied behind their back. They need Valtteri to be counter-punching a little bit as well.
Yeah, this second lap really works for Mercedes, doesn't it? And it's a good centre lap as well for good measure. And they know what they've got underneath them. Everybody's understeering a bit in that final corner and looking a bit perilously close to the wall. Away he goes, and Bottas then goes within a couple of tenths.
That's much more like it from Valtteri Bottas, still ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton as he was in FP1. He was the quickest driver in that particular practice session, was Bottas, but so far the only man other than Max Verstappen to get to the 116s.
Red Bull so need Sergio Perez to find that time. It's close to Max Verstappen here if they want to control the front. Verstappen gets on the pole, but I think we'd be quite surprised if he didn't. Yeah.
But they want that lockout.
I mean, I was on
control the race.
They've got to control the run down to the first corner somehow. They've got to block the track.
3 minutes and 30 seconds to go, and Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso coming towards the end of their first time laps of this session. Ocon round the final corner and will cross the line. Where does this put him? 10th fastest, pushes Nicholas Latifi and Carlos Sainz closer to the elimination zone. Lance Stroll is in that elimination zone. He won't be going any further because he had the big accident, only 13th fastest for Fernando Alonso. So Stroll, Russell, Mazepin, Mick Schumacher and Nicholas Latifi, the 5 drivers getting knocked out so far of Q1. 4 of them have a chance to do something about it. Lance Stroll to the medical centre and back to the team hospitality unit, and we hope he's okay. Mazepin.
Copy, I need to overtake him because he's not too slow.
Negative, stay behind, please.
You having a laugh?
I'm not having a laugh, Nikita. If you want to make a space now, make a space now.
Well, now there's interesting. We've heard a lot of Tecchi comments on the team radio down at Haas in races and in practice sessions. And he's feeling that Mick Schumacher's just going too slow for him, and that's compromising his qualifying. But that's a very strong statement for his race engineer, Dominic Haynes, to be saying there.
I thought it was a strong comment for him to receive, to be honest. Very strong.
Interesting. Down at Haas, who have never got out of Q1 at Mexico City for the Mexican Grand Prix, or the Mexico City Grand Prix, as it's called now. Either way, he's still behind his teammate, and he's got one more lap to try and improve his position.
And Carlos Sainz needs to put a proper lap in here. He's had a very difficult session so far. Ted's got further news.
Well, just to pick up, but that's so it's gone up the line of command, hasn't it? From Dominic Haynes, Mazepin's engineer, to Ao Komatsu. He was the one saying, I'm not having a laugh. Next time, it's Gunther Steiner on the radio, and you don't want that if you're a driver, do you?
Well, no, you don't. But in the heat of the moment, drivers always question what they're told, or often question what they're told. But the team say it for a reason. Back to the action. Carlos Sainz down the 1.2 kilometre long main straight, and from 212 miles an hour into a little right-hander at about 70 miles an hour.
Had to have quite a 2 or 3 bites at getting the car, coaxing it into the first apex. Then it settled down a little bit. They take a sweeping line in, make sure they break in a straight line for 4. Let's see how the car rotates around there. A little bit of understeer. 6, this will check the front out. And then even the back still, his tyres are not in the zone. He's still having to fight the car through the double apex of 6. Now you've got a bit more downforce. Cars skipping and jumping off the curbs. This is where the Red Bull is so strong. When they take these high speakers, some of the one corner do, there's 160 miles an hour, such as the speed. T12, where he went wide before, and no problem this time, and cranked the steering round then, and a lot of curb on the inside. That's all right. You ride the curb on the left. Now you've got to get into the early apex. More understeer from the Ferrari as it wants to head towards the wall. He comes over the line and goes P5. Took a shortcut to the line there.
So whilst he's doing that, his teammate Charles Leclerc has just set the fastest first sector. This is Nikita Mazepin. His teammate Mick Schumacher currently 16th fastest and out of qualifying. Checkered flag is waving. This is Mazepin's last effort in this qualifying weekend. And once again is out qualified by his teammate, goes 17th fastest as Yuki Tsunoda jumps into the top 5. Behind him, Nicholas Latifi trying to make his way out the bottom 5, just fails. Sadly for him, he's about 2 and a bit tenths behind Sebastian Vettel as Pierre Gasly goes second fastest.
Jesus Christ, Gasly.
Working well here, Verstappen, Gasly, and also Perez and Tsunoda, all Honda powered in the top 7 as Leclerc goes fastest overall by 4/100ths of a second from Max Verstappen.
Yes, Russell.
George Russell gets himself out of the bottom 5. He's got a 5-place grid penalty, but he's made it into Q2. Kimi Raikkonen goes 10th fastest. We'll have to see the stewards after this session, but he's actually made it out of Q1. Giovinazzi 12th fastest. Ocon is now at risk as Vettel goes 8th fastest, and Valtteri Bottas, with Mercedes going for another run on the same set of soft tyres, goes quickest overall. Where's Esteban Ocon? He and his teammate Fernando Alonso making their way along the second of the back straights, and Ocon is giving Alonso something of a tow here, and they're both on the cusp of the relegation zone.
Yeah,
Fernando's finished his lap. Apologies for that.
He was the last man over the line. He didn't quite take the flag, but I think he was letting Esteban through there, what you saw. But Ocon then, where is he at?
Just made it through.
He did make it, just made it through, but will he complete a hot lap? Maybe he doesn't need
No!
15th and 16th.
My God, that was close.
When I was out there yesterday, out on track. But what an evolution we saw there on the track as well, didn't we, for good measure?
Didn't we just, which helped Valtteri Bottas to go fastest overall ahead of Charles Leclerc, late laps and going first and second fastest. Verstappen was a long way clear, but as the track evolved, the others got a bit closer to him.
Gave it everything I had there, mate.
Yeah, man, that was really nice. That was a good lap, dude.
Sadly for Nikita Mazepin, though, only 19th fastest. Behind him, Lance Stroll, who had a big accident and could take no further part. We had a red flag that delayed things. Mazepin, Schumacher, Latifi and Alonso putting their feet up, all out of qualifying.
We are through, mate. That is P14. Well done.
Great job, guys. 2 gearboxes and an engine in 24 hours is definitely not bad going. Let's see what we can do in Q2.
Welcome back to Mexico City, where the fans are in fine voice, and qualifying a little delayed after a red flag brought out in the first part of the session following a crash. Lance Stroll at the final corner. If you want to watch highlights of qualifying alongside the live action by pressing the red button, if you're a Sky Q or a Sky Glass customer, you can do so. Now let's let's see how Lance Stroll is. He's with Rachel Brooks.
Hi, Lance.
Holy shit.
Ask if you're all right.
I'm okay, thank you.
Big hit. What happened? It looked like just got on some dirty part of the track, just off the white line, and then...
Yeah, it was just a little bit too wide. It was a bit dirty out there, and I lost it.
On the positive, if there is one, you were starting at the back anyway tomorrow, so once the car's rebuilt, there's no real change to your starting position. So get your elbows out and go for it tomorrow, I guess.
Yeah, just, for the mechanics and everyone, it's a big job, so... it's a bit a shame, I would still like to go through Q1 and see how the car felt, but we're starting from the back to see what we can do tomorrow.
Thanks, Lance. Thank you.
Well, great to see that Lance is okay. Let's talk to his team principal, Otmar Safnauer, on the team on the pit wall. Otmar, one car left in qualifying. The track is evolving, and quite dramatically, it seems. So what's the strategy from here on in?
Well, we're going to try to get into Q3, obviously, with Sebastian, and get him in a point scoring position on the grid tomorrow. So if we do a good job, I think we'll be able to get him into Q3.
Your longer runs yesterday looked pretty encouraging, Otmar.
Yeah, we were really good on the medium tire, and not to give anything away, but yeah, if we get him into Q3 on the medium, that would be really good.
Yes, leave those softs in the garage. Thanks ever so much indeed. There is a incident, pit lane exits incident, involving George Russell and Nicholas Latifi, investigated after the session. It's been a busy weekend, hasn't it, down at Williams. 2 engine changes, a gearbox change for George Russell, and now this.
They were side by side, and I think one of them might just have put some put their tyre over. Mind you, that was the Haas that's doing that. So
they cut in between Schumacher and Mazepin in the Haas.
Yeah, there's a right old squabble going on in this sort of feeder lane onto the racetrack, but
kind of need to see that from a different angle, really, because the bridge rather got in the way, didn't it?
Yeah, can you remember when there's been an incident involving two cars in the same team going up to the stewards? How does that one work? Your team manager sits there with one driver and then sits there with the other driver, does he?
I think they probably all sort out the conversation before they get anywhere near the stewards.
How unusual is that?
Who's representing the one that the team manager isn't representing? Right, so we've lost 5 drivers then. Lance Stroll, Nikita Mazepin, Mick Schumacher, Nicholas Latifi and Fernando Alonso in the Alpine, which, as Martin mentioned, has looked something of a handful on a track where he's only scored 1 point in 4 Mexico Grand Prix starts. Maybe it's not a surprise to see Alonso out. It's not one of his favourite tracks in Formula One. The highest driver of the championship without a podium. And out onto the track come an awful lot of drivers with the medium compound tyre. I'm not seeing softs light up at the moment, and that is no real surprise.
Yeah, and they don't have to babysit these quite as much on their way round either, as they do the soft tyre. That's why you see quite a lot more energy going on this outlap. No doubt they'll be wanting to find some space at the end of the lap, but Perez is out front. He'll not be getting a slipstream, followed by Sainz and Verstappen. I'd imagine Verstappen will be reasonably happy, actually, if he can sit there with a bit of a Ferrari slipstream as well down the pit straight.
Worth mentioning that Kimi Raikkonen is out there with the rest, and that's worth mentioning because we don't often get the chance to say that in Q2. It's only the second time in the last 5 months that Kimi's managed to get out of Q2.
Yeah, and nobody wants to start this race on the soft tyres, do they? Nobody wants to.
Now, whether this will change around a bit when they do their second runs in this second part of qualifying, we will have to wait and see, because there will some might think, well, we need the pace and we want to be a bit higher up the grid, but you've still got Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, Lando Norris all running in this session that are all going to get penalties to go to the back of the grid, and you've got George Russell that's got a five-place penalty. So where do you put your driver if you know that you're going to take a penalty? You don't want to be getting through into Q3, do you?
No, on the soft set of tyres. You do want to be ahead of the other drivers taking a penalty, but Sergio Perez picking the throttle up so early in the first corner, and was quite greedy on the curbs as well down there, but not in turn 6. It looked like it understeered a bit through there, and this is the part where the Red Bull, where they can ride the curbs better than anybody else and not have a secondary reaction through the exit of the corner down into turn 12. Then DRS down there now, and it's a 90 right-hander that swings around a little bit on the surface, and basically he's got 3 corners to go now to the end of the lap.
And 5/100ths of a second separating Perez and Verstappen through the first part of the lap. As you mentioned, picking up the throttle so much earlier than you might have expected. Perez crosses the line. It's a good lap from him with a 1:17.0. Verstappen through the middle sector was a couple of tenths up on his teammate. He's got Carlos Sainz, George Russell just ahead.
Well, that's my
bit of a slipstream as he heads towards the line. Verstappen goes quickest. Wow, 1:16.4.
Yeah, he had a lovely slipstream from the Ferrari, didn't he, at the start of the lap? But that's nice for him. But the Mercedes surely will get into 16s now as well.
I'm imagining Daniel Ricciardo got something of a slipstream from his teammate Lando Norris too. 27.2 for the first sector. That's a couple of tenths faster than anyone else has managed. Bottas and Hamilton and Bottas now second and third, and that is a lot closer on the medium compound tyre there. Just a tenth or 100th of a second in it between Verstappen and Hamilton.
Yeah, and Hamilton then getting the slipstream service from his teammate, and that will very much catch Red Bull's attention. So are they going to have to play that game with Sergio Perez? But that's interesting. It's very interesting. So Bottas' time solid, Hamilton's time right in there.
Isn't it just? Now, and we see.
Can we check the left-hand side underneath the bargeboard, I think? The way I hit the curb in turn 2.
Okay, understood.
Right, just a scraped in along the curb, and he thinks picked up a little bit of damage.
More super glue required.
Have they got enough left down at Red Bull? 10 minutes to
this is
go
gonna be
here.
interesting.
We often see this, don't they?
I think that's it, so.
A soft tyre run and a medium tyre run. The Red Bull and the Mercedes.
Oh my god, where is he?
And the Mercedes seems to,
oh my
to go
god.
well on that medium tyre. Ted, down to you.
Watching the only Alpine left in the competition in this qualifying. Very disappointingly for them, it's the wrong one, of course, because Esteban Ocon is going to be taking an engine penalty. And Fernando Alonso, the man who's clean of engine penalties, was knocked out in Q1. Very, very, very disappointingly for them. But in any case, Ocon is going to do a lap, as is Yuki Tsunoda, even though he's taking an engine penalty as well, just so they could start ahead of one another, or vice versa, in the final grid analysis.
Thank you, Ted.
Red Bull would be gutted if Perez only qualifies 5th. I know this is only to get you through to the top 10 shootout, isn't it? But
seemed like a good lap for Perez for much of it as well. And then Verstappen, Hamilton and Bottas made something of a dent in that. And Leclerc got involved in the action too. And we talked this weekend about team orders. If Max is leading and so Perez is leading and Verstappen second, do they swap it around? That wouldn't be very popular. I'd imagine Sergio Perez giving Max Verstappen the toe, if Red Bull needed, that would be even less palatable for most of the fans here.
McLaren have sort of tuned the car up nicely, haven't they? Because they looked a long way out of it in the early practice runs. But no, they aren't both in the top 10 at the moment.
Yeah, I think Ricciardo got a good toe from his teammate at the start of his lap. He was well up in the first sector as Esteban Ocon goes 12th fastest, only a 10th outside of the top 10. Yuki Tsunoda powers his way into the top 10. He is on the soft compound tyre. And Valtteri just doing their own thing on that one. But if he stays in the top 10, he'll be starting at the back of the grid and starting on the soft compound tyre, and that doesn't seem to be the fastest way to run this race.
He might come in quite handy though, mightn't he, for the sister Red Bull team maybe, or for Pierre Gasly indeed. So
there is that.
I wonder if Red Bull are playing the right, we need 4 cars in this, please. Because, as you say, for Tsunoda's performance, getting through to Q3 on soft tyres, it doesn't actually make a lot of sense, but be very handy to have him out there for Gasly.
Yeah, true. It's just an outlier that could cause a little bit of a blockage for others potentially. Valtteri Bottas improves his time with his second run on those medium compound tyres. So he stayed out there. Verstappen and Hamilton back in the garage, and Hamilton had picked up the best middle sector on that previous lap. Leclerc and Perez complete the top 6. Ricciardo, Sainz, Gasly and Norris all through as it stands.
I've got a tear off stuck to the rear wing. Copy that, we'll get that later.
And that's from his visor.
How did he know that?
Well, you know these mirrors that they can't see anything out of?
You can't see a whole lot of your rear wing, but obviously enough.
Would he feel it? Would he feel a tear off on the rear wing? Would it upset the balance?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Depending on which bit he got stuck in, of course. But yeah, if you close a key slot gap off with that, you would definitely know about it.
So in comes Yuki Tsunoda, who has been knocked out in Q1 8 times this year. But so far this weekend has actually looked a lot more at home at a track that he's not raced at before, has to be said.
And also, surprisingly quite see-through, the visor rip-offs. I'm very impressed that he saw that up there, but
I wonder if it has
1.22.
I kind of asked the question.
It's almost only got a
oh my god!
Or something to
on the soft tyre, the rest all on mediums. He's not reached Q3 in 3 consecutive races so far in his rookie season. Looks fairly handy to do so for the first time here this afternoon. Let's have a little look at some corner analysis. Turn 16, which is the slow corner that opens up the final right-hander. The magenta and the green. Verstappen the magenta, Hamilton the green, just showing how both drivers take that corner and then emerge out of it, Martin, in pretty similar order.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, sort of faster in, slower out. It's not
I
unusual
would
to see that. Then you can keep that advantage all the way down the straight then, but certainly Max is carrying a lot more speed, isn't he, into and through.
Certainly is. So 5 minutes to go.
So at that time, I would have been
Ted,
fifth.
down to you.
At Ferrari, and as the 2 cars are wheeled back into the garage, you can hear the air guns in the background, putting the tyres back on. I think they will have to go again nowhere near safe. Fernando Alonso. Oh, sorry, Esteban Ocon, you're looking at pictures. Sorry, I had a bit of a line on Fernando Alonso, actually. I might as well tell you that now. It's just that he couldn't get his lap together. There was no overt reason, nothing wrong with the car, Alpine telling me. He only had one run, effectively, at the end, because of some issues earlier on, but just couldn't get his lap together. Unusual for Fernando. They can recover some places tomorrow. But at Ferrari, first out, I thought we might see that as those tyres go on, and they are new medium tyres. For Sainz, so let's see whether Leclerc goes out as well. But yeah, not feeling safe, and do you know what? I can't blame them in that position.
What do we reckon the cut-off is here? If you're Verstappen and Hamilton, safely through?
Yeah, you want a 16 in front of your time, don't you, to feel comfortable? Of that, I'm pretty sure. But a 17 flat might just about do it.
So will we see Tsunoda and Bottas out, also in the 116s? Will Tsunoda want to come out? Maybe try and do it on the medium tyres.
So Sergio Perez is in front of Max Verstappen. What Sergio really needs to do is go and catch the Ferrari of Sainz within a few seconds of it if he gets a chance to. But, you know, just to confirm, this is about getting through to the top 10 shootout. This is not the grid.
No.
Well, not the grid for the top 10 anyway.
I hit 74.1. What? Oh my god, this is a good run, I swear to God.
Trying to pedal after Carlos Sainz as quickly as he can, then you take some life out of the tyres a bit. And Verstappen has gone out on a soft compound tyre here, so I assume he's just kind of bedding those in.
But this looks like a rehearsal, doesn't it? As you point out, soft compound tyre and a slipstream from Sergio Perez is what this looks like to me.
Yeah, which if they can do it, Perez gets one slipstream, Max gets the other, then that becomes a fairer way of doing it.
Yeah. But you'd want to be, it's going to be, we keep seeing the track evolution, don't we? Because times just keep popping up towards the end from all sorts of places on the grid. So Sainz then starts, it's such a long run down there. The traffic will stay out of his way to the right and pick a braking point, see where he goes. Long way towards the 100-metre wall, and just about makes the apex.
Daniel Ricciardo might have picked up a decent slipstream behind Carlos Sainz, heading down that main straight. Sainz through the next DRS zone now, powers his way towards turn 4.
We saw quite a lot of understeer, didn't we, on an earlier run with Carlos?
Yeah, I wonder if this is a bit an extra warm-up lap or not for Carlos Sainz. He's a long way off the pace.
Yeah, he wasn't pushing there, was he, at all, when we just cut to him going out of turn 5.
And Jensen was talking about this, Jensen Button was talking about this in the build-up to qualifying, how drivers might need a couple of warm-up laps here. The track temperature has actually rocketed up to 45 degrees. It's a lot hotter than it was for the final practice session.
Max Verstappen going through a couple of people on their outlap, Esteban Ocon, George Russell. So he clears them now, but interestingly, a 10th slower in the first sector was Verstappen, but we know he did get a good slipstream off Sainz's car in the first run.
Very true. So the bottom 5 with 1.5 minutes to go: Sebastian Vettel, George Russell, Esteban Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi and Kimi Raikkonen. They all need to get to the line to start their final lap before the checkered flag comes out. And then we'll see how it all stacks up, and we're on board with Lando Norris. Driver at risk, he's going to the back of the grid because of that engine penalty. 5/10 down on Max Verstappen's time through the first 2 sectors. And this must feel like forever going through that stadium section. But takes the curve nicely, Lando Norris, before making his way round that final corner. We'll see a bit more track evolution, potentially. No, still stays in 10th place, Lando Norris. Those temperatures are going up. It might be a reason why we didn't see any extra pace from him. Sebastian Vettel goes 11th fastest.
Lewis on a very quick lap as well, if he can keep the tyres together through the final sector. And Gasly had a good tow from Yuki Tsunoda, his teammate, wrestling the car through the exit, and some of them taking a shorter run to the line. Gasly then, surely just breaking under that 1:17.0 mark, might squeeze through on that.
Hamilton goes quickest overall, 9/1000ths of a second in it, and that is very close to the barriers. Antonio Giovinazzi's kept the engine running, but there's yellow flags that are being waved, and has he compromised anyone's run with the yellow flags that have been waved down at turn 12. They might have got away with it, the likes of Ocon and Ricciardo behind. George Russell down in 15th. The yellow flags have stopped waving by the time he gets down to turn 12. He's got some time to make up, as Russell has only done one personal best during the course of this lap. Albeit he's got a 5-place grid penalty. Where's Russell going to finish in this part of Q2? Hits the line 13th fastest ahead of Giovinazzi, who is out, and Esteban Ocon 2. Kimi Raikkonen also out of qualifying. Sebastian Vettel. So Lando Norris does make it through, despite not going faster on his second run.
Yeah, he does indeed. So that means he can be,
so
despite he can be of help to Daniel Ricciardo, can't he? That's why you pointed out earlier on. And that surely did make the barrier, but nice and square on.
Yes, if you're going to make contact with a barrier, kind of the way you want to do it.
Yeah. Square on into the barrier with what are now square tyres.
Yeah, but he's not going to need any more tyres today. That is Antonio Giovinazzi out of qualifying. Lewis Hamilton ended up fastest driver on the track. Verstappen on the soft tyres didn't improve, so he'll start on the mediums tomorrow. Tsunoda third fastest. We lost Vettel, Raikkonen, Russell, Giovinazzi and Ocon.
Couldn't go past because there was a yellow flag, so I couldn't pass Ricciardo at that time. So I had to back off.
Yeah, you weren't quite in the yellow sector, I don't think. We'll look at that afterwards, but it's okay. It's all good.
.3. Come on, this is the one. This is the one. This is the top one. What? That's bullshit. That was a .1, my dude. Nah, I'm trying again until I can get it. I got it. I want it.
Welcome back to qualifying here in Mexico. This was the start of resumption for Q1, and you've got a Haas, a Williams, a Haas and a Williams, and you've got the Williams of Nicholas Latifi rather pushing his way in. We can maybe watch it on board as well. Both George Russell and Nicholas Latifi have been called to see the stewards over this. And did anyone cross white lines? Should they have gone across the white lines? What's Nicholas Latifi's verdict on it? Let's hear from him with Rachel Brooks.
What's your take on what happened at the end of the pit lane when you and George were both released when everyone was queuing to get out at the restart? It's being investigated by the stewards later on.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising. I mean, it's a situation we've been in quite a few times before where obviously other cars start to queue up, and because we're at the end, we can't really just go straight, because if we were to merge in, we'd have to drive backwards down the pit lane. So the natural attitude of the car when we get released to not crash into the cars, that's kind of where we get released, and it's happened before a few times. So I mean, I don't really see what more we can do besides letting every single car go by, which is also not an option. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong there.
Well, I think the other teams would argue that what he needs to do is wait for everyone else to go, because let's go on board with George Russell. You can see the rest of the cars already queuing, and Williams release him. Now he's effectively trying to jump the queue. Latifi's already got ahead of him there, and I think that's what the other teams, especially Haas, would be objecting to, is the fact that they've tried to effectively undertake all of these drivers. So a bit like when you get past at the traffic lights and somebody's trying to squeeze ahead of you and take a left turn. So I imagine that's what the other teams are not happy about. Crofty, back to you.
Yes, British team, and we're very good at queuing, us Brits, so they should have queued Martin Brundle.
I don't think so. I can't see did anything wrong, to be honest, because, you know, with the geography of the pit lane, starts with the champions from last year and goes down to the back of the field, and you can't spend the entire year being disadvantaged because your garage happens to be at the end of the pit lane and you've got to wait. Good points. Latifi, one of 5 drivers knocked out in Q1. Fernando Alonso was another. Let's hear from him.
Fernando, you'll start from P13 tomorrow when penalties are applied, so it's better than it looks from that session today, but just talk us through those laps and why it was so difficult for you today.
Yeah, obviously it was a strange qualifying with the red flag. We were okay in the first attempt, but then not good on the last attempt. Lost a little bit of grip, but unfortunately we didn't go through. But yeah, as you said, we start P13 tomorrow. Let's see if we can take points.
Well, he might start a bit higher up, of course, because Lando Norris has got to take his grid penalty, as has George Russell. Actually, no, Alonso 16th, so he's absolutely right. If you're a Sky Q customer, Sky Glass customer, press the red button if you want to see highlights of this qualifying session alongside the live action, which now is going to concentrate on the battle for pole. Lewis Hamilton, for only the 3rd time this season, has managed to lead FP2.
Come on.
I don't know how significant that is.
He's the one.
Has Max Verstappen and Red Bull got a bit more to answer them back with? Let's go down to Karun Chandok and analyse slipstreaming here in Mexico City. How powerful is it, Karun?
Well, Crofty, you were mentioning that McLaren have got Lando in there to help Daniel out.